It was a bright afternoon at the Manila International Airport. Travelers hurried in every direction. Families saying goodbye, businessmen rushing to gates, children tugging on luggage. Among the crowd walked Princess Pacquiao, dressed simply in jeans and a white blouse, her hair tied neatly back. Despite being the daughter of one of the most respected figures in the Philippines, she moved with quiet humility. No entourage, no spotlight. Just her assistant, a bodyguard, and a bright smile. As she approached the immigration counter, she handed over her passport with both hands, as is customary, polite and respectful. The officer behind the desk, however, didn't even look up. He tapped the passport on the counter twice, sighing loudly, then gave her a look of mild irritation. "Purpose of travel?" he asked sharply. "Charity event in Singapore, sir," Princess answered softly. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Charity? You're traveling business class?" His tone wasn't curious, and it was mocking. The second officer beside him chuckled under his breath. "Looks like someone's trying to act important." Princess blinked, surprised. "Excuse me?" she asked, keeping her tone calm. The first officer leaned back in his chair, smirking. "We just need to make sure these passports aren't fake. You understand, right? We get all kinds of people trying to look rich." Passengers nearby began to notice. A small crowd started forming, their murmurs mixing with the hum of airport noise. Her assistant shifted uncomfortably, whispering, "Ma'am, just stay calm. We'll sort it out." Princess nodded slightly, refusing to let anger show. She'd been raised to handle disrespect with grace, but her silence only seemed to encourage the officer. "Where's your proof of funds?" he snapped. "Who paid for your ticket?" Her bodyguard stepped forward slightly, his voice controlled but firm. "Sir, that's enough." The officer shot him a glare. "You don't tell me what's enough." Tension rippled through the line. Phones were coming out, passengers beginning to record. Princess took a slow breath and said gently, "Sir, please. I've given all my documents. There's no reason to talk this way." The officer laughed again, tossing her passport onto the counter. "We'll see about that." What Princess did next shocked everyone standing there. For a moment, the only sound was the steady hum of the airport's air conditioning. Princess Pacquiao calmly picked up her passport from the counter and looked at the officer. Her expression steady, but her eyes clearly hurt. "Sir," she said quietly, "I'm only asking to be treated fairly." The officer leaned forward, elbows on the counter. "Fair? Everyone gets treated fair here," he said with a smirk. "Unless, of course, you've got something to hide." His partner laughed again, shaking his head as if enjoying the show. Passengers waiting in line exchanged uneasy glances. Some had begun recording openly now, their camera lenses glinting in the bright airport lights. Her assistant whispered nervously, "Ma'am, let's just walk away. We can report them later." But Princess stood her ground. "If I walk away now," she said softly, "they'll do this to someone else tomorrow." The officer heard her. "What did you say?" he snapped. "Are you threatening me?" Princess shook her head. "No, sir. I'm asking for respect. That's all." The officer slammed his palm on the counter, making nearby travelers flinch. "Don't talk back to me." The sound echoed. Her bodyguard instinctively moved closer, but Princess raised a hand to stop him. She knew one wrong move could escalate the situation. Her heart was pounding, but she refused to let fear take control. The officer grabbed her boarding pass, studying it with exaggerated suspicion. "Business class, huh? Must be nice. You must have rich parents, huh? Who paid for this ticket?" "I paid for it," Princess replied calmly. "And my documents are all in order," he scoffed. "Yeah, sure. We hear that all the time." A woman from the line suddenly spoke up, her voice trembling but loud enough to be heard. "Sir, she's done nothing wrong. Why are you talking to her like that?" The officer turned toward the woman. "Ma'am, mind your own business unless you want to miss your flight too." The crowd's discomfort grew. The phones kept recording. Someone muttered, "This isn't right." Princess took a deep breath and said firmly, "If there's a problem, please call your supervisor." The officer froze for a split second, then barked a laugh. "Supervisor? You think you can demand that? You're not special." Her assistant's voice trembled. "Princess, please, let's just go." But she stood taller. "No, I've done nothing wrong and I won't walk away like I did." The officer's tone grew louder, sharper. "Then maybe you'll come with me to the holding area while we verify your identity." The passengers gasped. Her bodyguard's jaw tightened. "Sir," he said carefully. "You're making a mistake." But the officer ignored him, raising his voice even more. "Everyone thinks they can talk back to us these days. You all think you're above the law." Princess's voice remained calm, steady as stone. "I don't think I'm above the law, sir. I believe the law should protect everyone. Even me." That sentence hung in the air like a spark before a fire. The officer's face hardened, but the crowd was no longer silent. Murmurs of support rose around her. People could see clearly now this wasn't about protocol. It was about power. Her assistant, now visibly shaking, pressed record on her phone as well. The lens captured every word, every glare. Princess folded her hands together in front of her, whispering a short prayer under her breath. She'd done nothing wrong, and she wasn't going to let fear or arrogance decide how this moment would end. Across the terminal, a security officer noticed the commotion and began walking toward them. The situation was escalating fast, but Princess didn't move. She stood her ground, quiet, composed, unshaken, and what happened in the next few minutes would turn that crowded airport into a national headline. Have you ever seen someone in power abuse their position? Comment your thoughts below. Also, tell us which country and city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know where our viewers are around the world. The tension around the immigration counter was thick enough to cut with a knife. Travelers who had once been focused on their luggage and boarding times now stood frozen, eyes fixed on the confrontation unfolding before them. Princess Pacquiao stood silently, her passport resting on the counter between her and the officer. The man's tone had grown sharper, his face flushed with anger. He wasn't used to being challenged, least of all by someone who refused to meet his hostility with fear. "Ma'am," the officer barked, "I'm giving you one last chance. Step aside and wait in the holding room while we verify your details." Princess didn't move. "Sir," she replied evenly, "I've already given you everything you asked for. My passport, boarding pass, and itinerary. What else do you need?" The officer sneered. "Maybe a little cooperation, maybe a little humility." Her assistant gasped quietly, tears forming in her eyes. "Ma'am, please," she whispered. "Let's just go somewhere else. We'll report him later. You don't need this." But Princess shook her head gently. "If I walk away now, how many others will he treat this way?" Her calmness unsettled the officer. He raised his voice, hoping volume would restore his authority. "You think standing here makes you brave? You're making this worse for yourself." Phones were lifted higher. Nearly 24 passengers were recording now. A man whispered to his friend, "This girl's got guts. She's not even shouting back." Manny Pacquiao's voice came faintly through Princess's phone. Her assistant had dialed home moments earlier. "Princess, sweetheart, what's happening? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mama," she said softly. "But they're being very rude." Jinky's tone turned urgent. "Where's your father?" "He's in the city." "I'll tell him right now." The officer noticed the phone and scoffed. "What, you calling your daddy to save you now?" The crowd gasped. A few people murmured, "That's too far." Princess took a slow breath. "Sir, I don't need saving," she said. "I just need you to do your job properly." The officer's expression hardened. "That's it," he snapped, slamming a form down on the counter. "You're coming with me to the holding room." He reached for her arm. Before he could touch her, her bodyguard stepped between them, his tone firm but respectful. "Officer, don't touch her. You're crossing a line." The officer's hand hovered near his belt, close to his radio, but also dangerously near his holster. The tension skyrocketed. The air itself seemed to stop moving. People in the crowd gasped, backing away slightly. A woman called out, "You can't treat her like that." Another voice shouted, "She's complying. Leave her alone." The officer glared at the bystanders. "Everyone back off. This is immigration business." But the murmurs only grew louder. Phones were recording from every angle now. The situation was spiraling beyond his control. Princess raised her voice just enough to be heard. "Sir, please. I have children watching this online. People learning from what we do. Don't let anger ruin your duty." Something about her words and the calm authority, the respect in her tone despite the humiliation, made a few in the crowd applaud softly. But the officer, red-faced and trembling with frustration, barked again. "You think you can tell me how to do my job?" "I think we should all remember why we have these jobs," Princess replied. "To serve with respect, not power." For a moment it was silent. Even the officers seemed unsure what to say. Then, from behind the glass divider, another staff member hurried out, whispering urgently into the officer's ear. His face changed. He looked toward the growing crowd, at the phones, at the quiet young woman who refused to bend. He muttered, "Fine, wait here. I'll get my supervisor." Princess nodded once, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you." He turned and stormed off toward the back office, the second officer following behind him nervously. As the crowd began to relax, Princess finally exhaled, her shoulders sinking slightly. Her assistant reached out to hold her hand. "You okay, ma'am?" She nodded. "Yes, but this isn't over yet." Across the airport, a few guards began approaching, alerted by the reports of an incident at immigration. Among them was a young officer who, upon seeing Princess's face, froze mid-step. Recognition flashed in his eyes. He whispered to his colleague, "Wait, isn't that Manny Pacquiao's daughter?" The news began to ripple through the terminal like wildfire. The moment the first whispers spread, the energy in the terminal began to shift. "That's Manny Pacquiao's daughter," a teenage boy muttered, holding up his phone camera to zoom in. "I swear that's Princess Pacquiao." At first, people didn't believe him. The young woman standing at the counter looked so ordinary. Simple clothes, no security entourage, no signs of wealth or fame. She wasn't surrounded by assistants or flashing cameras. But the more they looked, the clearer it became. The resemblance was unmistakable. Her eyes, her calm composure, the quiet dignity in her expression. The whispers grew louder. "Is that really her? Oh my God, that's Pacquiao's daughter. What are those officers doing?" By now, nearly the entire immigration hall had noticed. Dozens of phones were raised, recording from every possible angle. The first officer returned from the back office, visibly irritated. "All right," he barked, "no one leaves until I say so." His voice echoed across the terminal, drawing even more attention. He hadn't realized what was happening around him. His face was red with pride and anger, too clouded to sense the change in atmosphere. Princess Pacquiao stood silently, her passport still in her hands. Her assistant leaned close and whispered, "Ma'am, people are recognizing you. They know who you are." Princess looked over her shoulder, seeing the growing crowd, the dozens of phones, and the faces full of sympathy. But she didn't smile or act superior. Instead, she whispered back, "Let's not tell him. Let's just see what he does when no one's pretending." The second officer looked increasingly nervous. He had heard the whispers too. Sir," he muttered, tugging lightly at his partner's sleeve. "I think we should check," but the senior officer snapped, "No, I don't care who she thinks she is. These people think they can buy respect. Not here." The crowd reacted audibly, gasps, murmurs, even a few shouts. One man near the line called out, "She hasn't done anything wrong. Stop harassing her." Another woman said, "You don't even know who that is." The officer spun toward them. "Enough, everyone quiet." But the command no longer held power. The tide was turning. People were no longer afraid of his authority. They were disgusted by it. The teenage boy who'd first recognized Princess turned on his phone's flashlight, recording directly toward the officer. "You're gonna regret this, man," he whispered under his breath. The younger immigration officer grew paler by the second. He leaned in and said again, "Sir, really, I think—" "Not another word," the senior officer hissed, cutting him off. "I've been in this job 20 years. I know who's genuine and who's pretending." Princess looked at him calmly. "So tell me, sir," she said gently, "what does someone have to look like for you to treat them with respect?" The officer blinked. Her words cut deeper than she intended. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said quietly, "that respect should come before judgment, not after it." A ripple of murmurs followed. The crowd started clapping softly. The officer's jaw tightened. "You people don't understand how things work," he shouted, his voice echoing off the high ceiling. "You think you can film me and make me look bad?" Someone yelled back, "You're doing that yourself." Security guards from a nearby gate rushed toward the scene, alerted by the noise. One of them, a young woman in uniform, recognized Princess instantly. Her eyes widened as she whispered to her partner, "That's the senator's daughter." The guards exchanged glances. They didn't know whether to intervene or wait for higher authority. The senior officer, still unaware of the gravity of his situation, was pacing behind the counter, fuming. He pointed toward Princess. You're not going anywhere until I say you can. You hear me? She nodded slowly, her voice composed as ever. Then I'll wait, sir, because truth doesn't need to run. That single sentence silenced the room. Her tone wasn't arrogant, it was calm, moral, unshaken. The crowd erupted in quiet applause again, their support growing louder. The younger officer stepped aside, whispering anxiously, "Sir, please. We should check the system. We might have made a mistake." But the senior officer was too far gone, trapped between ego and realization. Just then, a middle-aged man in a dark suit entered the hall, scanning the crowd. His badge read Chief Inspector, Immigration Services. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his tone sharp but composed. Everyone turned. The crowd parted. The senior officer straightened his uniform nervously. "Routine verification, sir." "Just doing my job," the chief inspector frowned. "Verification for what?" "She's holding a diplomatic visa." The officer froze. Diplomatic?" The chief stepped closer, glancing at the passport in Princess's hands. The crest, the signatures, the seals, and all genuine. Then his eyes met hers and realization struck. "Oh my goodness," he muttered. "Ma'am, you're—" Princess raised her hand gently. "Please, sir, don't make a scene. I'm not here for special treatment. I just want fairness, one for everyone." The chief inspector nodded solemnly. He turned to the offending officer, his voice low and dangerous. "You will report to my office immediately after this." The officer's face drained of color. The crowd began to applaud louder now, not out of excitement, but out of deep respect for the young woman who had endured humiliation without losing her grace. Princess bowed her head slightly, saying softly, "Thank you for stepping in." The chief sighed. "Ma'am, I'm truly sorry for how my staff behaved. This will be handled immediately." But Princess shook her head. "Please don't apologize to me. Teach them to never treat anyone like that again." Her words landed heavily in the air. Cameras continued rolling, capturing every second. Outside the terminal, the hashtag #RespectEveryone was already beginning to trend online, and though Princess didn't know it yet, this quiet moment of dignity was about to become a global lesson in humility and leadership. The atmosphere inside the immigration hall was electric. The crowd, now fully aware of who the young woman was, buzzed with whispered disbelief and anger. Phones continued to record, flashes of light reflecting off the glass counters. The senior officer stood stiffly beside his station, avoiding everyone's gaze. Princess Pacquiao remained calm, her hands clasped in front of her. She hadn't raised her voice once, but the silence around her was deafening. Every traveler, guard, and staff member could feel that something monumental was about to happen. Her phone buzzed. It was a call from her father. She took a deep breath before answering. "Papa," she said quietly. "I'm okay, it's just an immigration misunderstanding." From the other end of the line came the steady, unmistakable voice of Manny Pacquiao. Calm, grounded, but edged with authority. "Put me on speaker, Anak." Princess hesitated for a moment, then did as he asked. The sound of his voice filled the hall. "Good afternoon," he began, his tone controlled and polite. "This is Senator Manny Pacquiao. May I ask who's in charge here?" The chief inspector straightened instantly. "Senator." "Sir, I'm Chief Inspector Robles. Please accept our sincerest apologies. We're addressing this immediately." But Manny's voice didn't rise or soften, it stayed steady, almost calm in its restraint. "I understand mistakes happen," he said. "But disrespect, and that's a choice." The officer who had caused the scene froze in place, his hands trembling slightly. Sweat rolled down his temple. "Sir, I didn't know." Manny interrupted gently. "That's the point," he said. "You didn't know, and you didn't care to know." The hall fell silent. You saw a young woman simply dressed and assumed she was beneath your respect. You questioned her worth because of how she looked, not who she was. "Tell me, officer, if she wasn't my daughter, would she still be standing here?" The officer swallowed hard. His voice cracked as he said, I didn't mean any harm, sir." Manny's voice deepened. "You meant to humiliate her, and in doing so you humiliated the badge you wear." The words hit like thunder. The crowd was completely still. Even the air seemed to pause. Princess looked down, her eyes glistening. She wasn't crying, but the emotion in her father's voice struck something deep in her. She knew he wasn't angry only for her. He was angry for every person who had ever been disrespected in silence. Manny continued, his tone unwavering. I've faced champions in the ring who were stronger than me, faster than me. But I never disrespected them. Because respect, that's where real strength begins. He paused, then added, "What you did here today wasn't about duty. It was about pride. And pride without respect is just weakness pretending to be power." The chief inspector looked at the floor, ashamed. "Senator, I take full responsibility for my men's actions. They will be dealt with immediately." "No," Manny said. "Don't deal with them quietly. Teach your entire department what happened here. Let this be the example." Princess finally spoke. "Papa, please." "I'm all right. I don't want this to turn into a scene." Manny's voice softened. "I know, Anak. But some lessons need to be seen, not just heard." He took a deep breath on the line. "Officer," he said calmly, "hand over your badge for now. You're relieved of duty effective immediately. There will be an investigation, but until then, you're done here." The officer looked stunned. "Sir, please, This isn't revenge," Manny said quietly. "It's accountability. There's a difference." The chief inspector nodded solemnly and took the officer's badge from his chest. The sound of the pin unclasping echoed through the hall. For a moment, no one spoke. Then slowly the crowd began to clap. Not wildly, not chaotically, but respectfully. A few people even stood taller, as though they'd just witnessed something greater than justice. Manny continued speaking, his voice echoing through the speakerphone. "To everyone here, thank you for standing up. To those who recorded this, I ask one thing. Don't use this to shame anyone. Use it to remind people that respect is free, but losing it can cost everything." The crowd nodded. Many lowered their phones. Some even wiped away tears. Princess smiled faintly. "Thank you, Papa," she said softly. Manny replied gently, "You didn't need me to defend you. You already did, with grace. I'm proud of you." The phone call ended, but the moment lingered. The officer, now stripped of his authority, stood silently, his pride broken. His partner kept his head bowed, visibly shaken. Princess turned to the chief inspector. "Please make sure no one else goes through this. People deserve to be treated with kindness, whether they're rich, poor, or just tired travelers trying to go home." The chief nodded firmly. "Yes, ma'am. You have my word." As Princess walked toward her gate, escorted now by staff who couldn't stop apologizing, the entire terminal seemed to watch her in awe. She didn't smile, didn't wave, and she just walked quietly, holding her passport close, her dignity unbroken. Behind her, a woman whispered to her son, "That's what real class looks like." And though the officer's career had just ended, it was Princess Pacquiao's poise, not her father's power, that people would remember. Her calmness had turned humiliation into history. The echoes of the crowd's applause still hung in the air long after Princess Pacquiao ended the call. The senior officer, now stripped of his badge, stood frozen, staring down at the floor as the chief inspector held the insignia of his authority in one hand. Around them, the atmosphere was thick with disbelief. People had just witnessed something rare, calm justice unfolding in real time. Princess remained near the counter, speaking softly with her assistant and thanking the staff who had stepped in. Her composure, even after everything, was astonishing. She hadn't gloated, hadn't raised her voice. She had simply stood firm in truth. Then, just as the situation seemed to settle, another immigration officer entered the hall. He looked younger, clean-cut, with a measured confidence in his stride. His nameplate read Officer Reyes. "Chief," he called out, noticing the tension. "I came as fast as I could." "We got reports of a disturbance?" The chief nodded, looking weary. "Handled now, Reyes, though it shouldn't have happened in the first place." Reyes's eyes drifted toward Princess. His steps slowed, his brow furrowed, and then, in a sudden rush of recognition, his expression changed completely. "Wait," he said, disbelief in his voice. "Is that Princess Pacquiao?" The room went still again. The embarrassed officer's face went pale. The chief exhaled. "Yes, and unfortunately your colleague here didn't realize it before deciding to test her patience." Reyes turned sharply toward the disgraced officer. "You disrespected her? Sir, that's Senator Pacquiao's daughter. She's an ambassador for the Children's Foundation. She represents this country abroad." The officer stammered. I didn't know." Princess raised her hand gently, stopping him mid-sentence. "It's all right," she said softly. "You didn't know because you didn't ask. You only assumed." Her words hit harder than anger ever could. Reyes looked at her with genuine respect. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry this happened. You shouldn't have been treated like that. Not you, not anyone." Princess smiled faintly. "Thank you, officer. I don't need special treatment, just fairness. That's all anyone deserves." The chief stepped forward. "Senator Pacquiao has already given instructions. This will be formally reviewed. Suspension is effective immediately, pending a full investigation." The officer nodded stiffly, shame written all over his face. The crowd murmured in approval. Cameras continued to roll, but now the tone had changed. This wasn't just about a confrontation anymore. It was a lesson unfolding, a moment of truth captured from every angle. Princess turned toward the passengers who had defended her earlier. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Not for recognizing me, but for recognizing what was wrong." A man in line replied, "We just did what anyone should do, ma'am." She smiled again. "That's what makes it powerful." The chief gestured for the suspended officer to be escorted away. As he left, Princess called after him, not with anger but compassion. "I hope you learn from this, sir. Everyone makes mistakes. It's what we do after that defines who we are." The officer paused, his eyes wet, then nodded silently before disappearing into the hallway. Reyes turned to Princess. "Ma'am, would you like an escort to your gate?" She shook her head. "No need, I can walk." But as she took a step, the entire terminal began to clap again. This time louder, fuller, not for justice or fame, but for grace. Dozens of travelers applauded the way she handled herself, calm under humiliation, kind in victory. The chief inspector approached one last time, his tone humble. "Ma'am, I'll ensure every officer under me goes through retraining on ethics and professionalism. This incident won't be forgotten." Princess nodded. "Good, because respect isn't about who you're talking to. It's about who you are." As she walked toward security, her assistant whispered, "Ma'am, you could have shouted, demanded special treatment, but you didn't." Princess smiled softly. "If I had shouted, I'd have proved them right. Silence sometimes says more." From the back, a traveler called out, "You showed them what real class looks like." She turned slightly, waved politely, and continued walking, her head held high, her steps unhurried. Outside the terminal, news crews were already gathering. Clips from travelers' phones were flooding social media. Within minutes, hashtags like "Respect Everyone," "Princess Pacquiao," and "Power with Grace" were trending worldwide. Inside the immigration office, the chief looked at Reyes. "You see that?" he said quietly. "That's the kind of person who reminds us what our badges really stand for." Reyes nodded. "Yes, sir. Real strength isn't loud, it's calm." And in that simple truth, the entire hall seemed to breathe again. The tables had turned not through anger or revenge, but through dignity, patience, and unwavering respect. Do you think the officer deserved to lose his badge after this incident? Share your thoughts in the comments below. By nightfall, the entire internet was talking about it. Clips from the airport had spread like wildfire across Facebook, TikTok, and X. Millions watched the moment Princess Pacquiao stood her ground with calm strength. No shouting, no tears, no arrogance. Just quiet power. The headline that dominated. The news feeds read, "Immigration officers disrespect Senator Pacquiao's daughter. Her response wins the world." Comment sections flooded with messages of admiration. She handled it better than most adults ever could. This is how you fight injustice, with dignity, not rage. Pacquiao raised his daughter right. Within hours, television stations aired the footage on primetime news. Anchors replayed the clip of Manny Pacquiao's calm but commanding phone call, calling it a masterclass in leadership. Editorials praised both father and daughter, him for his composure, her for her grace. At dawn the next morning, Princess woke to hundreds of notifications. Her phone buzzed nonstop with messages from friends, celebrities, even strangers around the world thanking her for how she handled the ordeal. But she didn't smile with pride. She sighed softly, knowing that while she had moved on, Others still face that same kind of treatment every day. When reporters gathered outside the Pacquiao residence hoping for a statement, Manny came out dressed simply, as always. No entourage, no podium, just a man speaking from the heart. He addressed the cameras. "I'm proud of my daughter. Not because of who she is, but because of how she acted when no one knew who she was." He paused, his expression somber. What happened yesterday should remind all of us that respect has no rank, no uniform, no price. Whether you're serving or being served, you owe each other basic human dignity. Reporters nodded. His words carried weight, not because of his fame, but because he lived by them. Princess later posted a short message on her social media page. "To everyone who stood up, recorded, or simply cared, thank you. I forgive the officers involved. I hope this teaches all of us that no one should be judged by appearance or status. Respect everyone, always." The post gathered millions of likes and shares within hours. Schools used her story as a teaching example. Commentators praised the Pacquiao way, strength through humility, justice through kindness. At the immigration office, reforms were already underway. Officers were scheduled for retraining, and new guidelines were introduced about professionalism and courtesy. The disgraced officer released a public apology saying, "I learned the hard way that power means nothing without respect." Princess chose not to respond publicly, but those who knew her said she was simply relieved that the message had reached people's hearts. Weeks later, while attending a charity event, a young woman approached her shyly. "Ma'am," she said, "I saw your video. It made me brave enough to speak up when my boss treated me unfairly. I didn't shout, I just stood my ground like you did." Princess smiled warmly and replied, "Then it was all worth it." The story that began as an airport confrontation had turned into a worldwide conversation. It was no longer about a famous name or an abused privilege. It was about what happens when someone chooses calm over chaos, dignity over ego, respect over pride. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the Manila skyline, Princess scrolled through her phone one last time before setting it down. The world had spoken, and for once it spoke with unity. At the top of the comments section, one phrase appeared over and over again: respect. If you believe in treating everyone with respect, no matter their status, color, or title, type respect in the comments.